Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Coaches Exploring the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from a Principles Behind Clarity perspective. And on this episode, we're looking at habit 3, put first things first. The first thing that jumped out at me about this habit was, well, a couple of things. One is just, this is a very practical habit, right? Like the other stuff is a little more philosophical, I guess, and this is very practical.
Yeah.
So it's for me anyway. I'm interested to hear how this conversation goes because of that and how we relate it to the principles. But the other thing for me is this habit itself for the last 25 years of my life has been, I don't know, one of the biggest insights, or 20 years ago or whatever it was when I first read this habit gave me the insight of like, oh, this is how you get stuff done. And it's been a huge game changer for me ever since. It's kind of like a blueprint for taking habit 2, begin with the end in mind, your vision of what you want to do. And this is the habit of how do you actually do it.
Yeah.
So it's been big for me.
Yeah. I was kind of pleased to sort of have a quick reminder of because here we're on habit 3, but just like, let's remember though, however, what habit 1 is. You're the creator, you're in charge, which sounds very much 3 principles to me as a basic understanding. Like it's yours to do or be anything, if you like.
Yeah.
And again, just literally bearing that in mind for every single thing that you do. Somehow your outcome is always going to be different, providing you're thinking you're not having a good outcomes kind of thing. As he, exactly as he said, because if we come from there, it empowers you to say, that's an unhealthy program I've been given from my childhood, from my social mirror, from, speaking behind the mask, from, and I don't like it. It gives you the power to say that.
Yeah. It's the master key to get out of any prison that you've created, or that's been created, you thought was created for you.
Yeah.
I know I mentioned this before when we first read habit 1, the you're the creator thing, but it just, every time I read those 3 words, you're the creator, now it just is such a deep meaning. Like, it's not just you are the creator of what you're going to do in your schedule this week. It's not like, no, you're the creator, you're divine, you're God, you create your reality. Like you said, Elaine, it's just very powerful.
Yeah. The thing, it is powerful. And like what I'd have liked to have seen, because as I read it from let's say from a clarity perspective, habit 1, then habit 2, then habit 3, like they still somehow, there's something in the writing that sort of separates each from the other. But as I read it, it's, I would have liked to have seen written sort of some kind of understanding, because it's, habit 3 comes from habit 2, and habit 2 comes from habit 1. Like in the reading, I didn't see the connection. Yet with my understanding of clarity, they're all totally intertwined and connected, and not necessarily sequential. And that's one of the things I noticed. And I'd have liked to see, because it seems to me that from habit 1, and when you are the creator, you're in charge. And I know we're talking about habit 3, but it seems to have to start from here. That's where insight's going to come from. It's not going to come out of habit 2, even the mental creation. It's not going to come from there. Because again, the mental creation is after thought. So it's already, if you like, as is habit 3, the second creation, the physical creation, the thing that you actually realize you make physically, is a product of your thought processes, which could, risk contamination, let's say. You might not end up with what you want. Set out like that, then it looks to me like Covey's got it very clear how it works, and indeed the examples that he gives later on certainly would point to that. But it was just let's say, the way I read it because of my other information from clarity, let's say.
It feels like it's I think how I took it is it's the culmination of the first and the second, and the without the self-awareness, and where he talks about imagination and conscience, without those, the actualization, the putting the first things first aren't going to be possible. Because we don't know what first thing is to put first, so you kind of need those first. So for me, it just feels like the culmination, and when he says, and it's the day in, day out, moment by moment doing it. So it's you've got the self-awareness and realization, and it's something in your conscious, and then it's okay, this is how it comes out.
Yeah. And for me to tie it into some of the stuff from clarity, it's like I think of this is the experience of it, right?
Yeah.
It's reveling in the experience of what gets created, and then from what you were just saying, Lynn, there's something about the moment to moment thing that you just said, of just like, this is the being in the present moment of the experience, and seeing that vision or whatever you're trying to create or wanted to create, how it comes to life, and navigating that and adjusting as you go, and taking it as it comes, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I kind of, as I say, as I'm speaking in order of reading, if you like, as if I hadn't read the full chapter, but as we go through it,
sure,
as he gets to, speaking of the power of independent will, suddenly, I occasionally have my biblical sort of things, that the first words that came up to me is something about know thyself sort of idea. And then what just dropped into my head, well, yeah, of course, power of independent will, in addition to self-awareness, imagination, and conscious, it is the fourth human endowment, again pointing inside. It's there, it's an endowment, you've got it. And he speaks of independent will, and then from that, we're like, yeah, and if you've got that, and Jamie's little equation popped up, clarity equals you minus contamination. There you go.
Yeah.
But
yeah, when I thought about the independent will, it was the falling out of your thinking, finding clarity, and realizing that, oh yeah, I don't have to run that program or live that story.
Yeah. It's this seeing through, isn't it?
Yeah. And then it sort of sounds to me like, let's say Covey's main theme is management. We're talking about management, basically, be it business or personal management or whatever. But then again, from that, it looked to me, because later on he goes on to explain, about, well, the quadrants and the schedules. It looks to me that as long as that is the first thing, rather than the scheduling or the prioritizing, as long as that is your priority as you step out on a day-to-day basis, moment-to-moment basis, then the management of such things that will be your life or your job or your family or whatever will no longer need nor priority nor scheduling because they'll be automatic. I'm not sure if that actually plays out in my life exactly like that, but it sounds as if, that could be a sort of something to kind of look at in, more depth and see if that actually happens.
Is it that they'll be automatic, or they would be more obvious?
Well, they'll be more obvious. They'll be more like, it's not a sort of like, well, what am I going to put on the schedule today? That seems to be like the priority. Is it the priority or the schedule that's most important? I don't know. It's like, what's important to my inner being, knowing that my inner being comes from love and understanding, which will automatically also include your business partners, the people who work for you, your employees, or your own very own boss, and your family and your life and all the rest of it, because it'll always come from that place. And it looks to me that really he's pointing to that, but he doesn't express it, let's say, in the same way that I got it from Jamie. That's
what I'm hearing. What you're saying, it's kind of, the automatic kind of notion is, it's like once you have an insight in an area of your life, your behaviors will be automatic in relation to whatever you've had the insight on. So before this call, we were talking a little bit about my eating and stuff. So once I've had an insight into, I don't need that chocolate bar, it no longer becomes an exercise in me wanting it and then talking myself out of having it. I just don't even want it anymore. Like it's automatic that I'm not eating that because I'm not even thinking about craving it. So I think when in the context of this stuff, like when you have insights into your roles and goals and what you want to accomplish and into your scheduling, it will just automatically flow from this new paradigm of how you see the world, how you see things coming into creation, what your role in that is. And that's kind of how I relate to what you were talking about.
Yeah.
I highlighted here on 170, he says, in other words, if you're an effective manager of yourself, your discipline comes from within. So again, like inside out. It is a function of your independent will. You are a disciple, a follower of your own deep values and their source. So, that the key things there are from within. And for me, the last part, and their source.
Their source.
Wisdom, divine intelligence, being guided. I mean, this isn't really a principles related thing or clarity related, but I highlighted this line a little below that says, the successful person has the habit of doing the things failures don't like to do. They don't like doing them either necessarily, but their disliking is subordinated to the strength of their purpose. And I thought, that's
I highlighted that too, and I highlighted that because to me that says that is the guide. That's the guide. That's what's going to kind of tell you if that's the thing to do, or that's the thing to do, or that's the direction to go in, or that's the direction to go in. It's that, the strength of your purpose, that's the guide. What's that telling you, and other things we're back to subtractive. The other things fall away because they don't make sense.
And it points to me as well about something about if you're subordinated to the strength of the purpose, of their purpose, and purpose is something to do with habit 2, beginning with the end in mind. Which again, it's sort of the starting point is before and beyond, or over and beyond, if you like.
That little part too reminds me of how Jamie bangs on a lot about courage, right? Because it takes courage to subordinate your things, your disliking of things to a greater purpose, right? So whether it's public speaking or making a video. So it's courage is a big player in that. Yeah, the next part I found it hard to relate to the principles just because it does get into such a practical
Yeah, me
application
too.
of the habit with the quadrants and
Yeah, me
things.
too. I sort of kept underlining bits, and then I thought, except in parts when he kind of refers back to things like, expectation and satisfaction lie in our circle of, every time he points back to circle of influence, it sort of made more sense to me, or seemed to. And it did sound very practical and sort of, let's do this kind of thing. And I love the way he sort of, compares and contrasts the four quadrants, and pointing out, where the best place to be is. Although he also notices that, there's not one of those that is like perfect, because it'll always take into account something else, sort of thing. But I sort of stuck with it and read through it until he came to, and I'll see if I can find it. But anyway, maybe we can go on, but I'll come to it again. When again he comes back to the fourth, did he use dimension? I can't remember what he used. Not the fourth quadrant, the fourth.
The generations, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it's, here's something's making sense here, but I'm sure we'll come to it so we can carry on.
Yeah, because the third generation of time management was like a to-do list.
That's it.
And then the fourth generation is, I think it's the to-do list, but through the lens of your roles and goals and your vision, your begin with the end in mind.
Yeah. I like the example he gave. Sorry, Lynn.
No, go on.
I like the example on page 177 of his wife, what it takes to say no.
Yeah.
Mm.
I love that story.
I love the story, and I love the story because I underlined on page 178 as the paragraph that starts with "some time ago," but she felt pressurized into it and finally agreed. It's the feeling, follow the feeling. It's the feeling that's going to give you information upon which you can act once you see it. But I'm imagining that, I can see the situation. How many times have I said yes when I haven't wanted to?
Yeah.
And it's always been, the thought process, well, what'll they think of me? Well, I can't back off this. Oh, they'll think I'm a real wimp or whatever. From the feeling, the thoughts, which won't usually get us anyway, because we're always trapped in some kind of misunderstanding. And then how she goes on to say, what she tried to sort of crew a friend into it, and the friend just kind of said, yeah, thanks.
No. Yeah.
Yes.
But she had such a lovely that's what I underlined. It was her response, because it was so filled with consideration and love, and
exactly.
It's such a worthy undertaking. I appreciate so much you inviting me to be part of it. I feel honored by it for a number of reasons. I won't be participating myself. And then his wife, on the side goes, I wish I'd said that.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I first came across this, whatever it was 20 years ago, I went hardcore at this at work.
To everything.
I really adopted the say no to stuff. And I remember getting a phone call from one of our operations people. I'm like, we need you in this store, in this thing, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, no. And they're like, what do you mean no? And I'm like, yeah, well, I got other important things going on right now. I can't do that right now. And then he was like yelling at me, and I'm like, sorry, you're going to have to figure out another way to deal with that. And then next thing you know, he phones his boss, and then his boss phones my boss.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just went in and explained to I think eventually I ended up being forced to go do it anyway. Mm-hmm. But like until the point where my boss basically said, you have to go do it, I was sticking to my guns and like saying no. Like I've done my planning, I've done my priorities. What they want me to do has nothing to do with what's important to me or my job. Now, so it's in my boss's purview to change the priorities of my job. So that's fine. So once he said, no, you have to do that. Okay, that's fine. Things change.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this because this really changed the way I approach my job.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say people stopped coming to me for stuff, but people got the message pretty quickly. Like if I wasn't just going to, subordinate what was, what I was working on to go and do their, whatever they wanted me to do on a whim, which I used to probably, and a lot of people would have done. So.
Well, they were probably in quadrant 1, right?
Yeah.
They were in crisis mode and tried to solve problems, and you were their go-to. So, and you're like, oh no, I'm over here in quadrant 3. I'm not helping you out, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I truly did try to live in quadrant 2.
In quadrant 2, I mean, yeah.
Important and not urgent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
and what's I can't remember what I actually made some notes, which I haven't done up until now, but when I was trying to look in terms of relation to things on page 179 and talking the whole urgent and important thing. And it's exactly that. Urgent to me seems like outside, and important is, and the example you gave is exactly that. So the urgent was coming from them. It's outside. It's outside of what you had seen as priorities and towards your vision, your goals, your whatever. And the importance to you, that's, you've already determined. So that's the inside part.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
And what I see in that is, in your example, Greg, is also the horizontalness. There's no more the hierarchical structure that generally rules in most organizations and cross organizations as well. If it's like B2B stuff sort of thing.
Yeah.
And again, it's not even about whether you ended up, I'm thinking, doing the job anyway. It's something, because that would sort of be answered by, your disliking is subordinated to the strength of your purpose. The purpose here would be, I'm going to say it in very poor words, let's say, sticking to your guns.
Yeah.
You've got stuff to do. That's the way it is. But you've also created ground, for anything that could be perceived as your future failure in executing one job or another, because you've simply said, hey guys, I've got so much stuff going on here. So a bit like the other example that he gave, Covey was saying he wanted to get some people he wanted to get his whatever guy to do some extra stuff for him because he was feeling pressured. And the guy just said, well, yeah, you just tell me which of this other stuff you don't want me to do. No problem. Yeah. No problem at all.
Yeah.
And I'll do that. Yeah. So like and that, I think we'll come on to it. That's the win-win.
Yeah.
It's just perfect.
Yeah. It's the win-win.
Yeah. Well, I used to think of it as these quadrants, like rather than 4 things, I used to look at it as firefighting versus fire prevention. And I was in the fire prevention business. So I was building processes and systems and things to prevent fire. Now, if the fire was out of control, raging, okay, that's urgent and important. You got to go deal with that fire. But if it's just a little fire burning over there that can be ignored, I wouldn't get sucked into it. I'd be over here going, no, like I'm figuring out how to prevent those fires from ever starting again, ever, so we don't have to deal with them. So like I came up with all kinds of things in the way we planned ads and did our pricing and all the things that downstream became problems.
Yeah.
I figured out how to come up with an upstream solution for it. And that's kind of, as I'm saying these words out loud, that's maybe I'm seeing this connection between what we talk about in coaching with upstream and downstream.
Yeah.
Quadrant 2 is really the upstream kind of solution to problems versus being downstream. So, worrying about the content of our thoughts downstream versus understanding the nature of thought, kind of upstream.
And also there's something about the relevance of the word important anyway, because again, that is a completely personal point of view.
Yeah, very
And
subjective.
remains as a point of view. It's not in, at least each and every one of us will have our own pair of goggles around the word important.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So
We have our own separate reality of what's important.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which Covey perhaps doesn't address as such.
Yeah.
But he does indeed sort of point to it, I think. You know.
The other I highlighted here under living it on the end of page 190, leading into 191, it says your principle center, your self-awareness, and your conscience end can provide a high degree of intrinsic security, guidance, and wisdom to empower you to use your independent will and maintain integrity to the truly important. And I just thought of that, like when you know who you really are, there's no better intrinsic security than that.
Yeah.
What I wrote down there, and I didn't highlight it, so I can't find it. It's on page 191, and it says, expectations are often a reflection of the social mirror rather than our values and priorities. And I think if we think about that from a principles behind clarity perspective and people we work with, when we're sitting with people and they're up in their heads and stressed about things, it's typically not coming from a place of, I'm positioning around my values and priorities. It's something about what is out there. It's the expectations of other people, the shoulds, the story, we were talking earlier about our stories and how they've come with us. And so I think all of that, whereas that's, if we turn that around, that goes from outside to totally inside. I wish I could find a point on the page, which I can. Oh, there it is, yeah. Down at the bottom of page 191, I see parents, particularly mothers with small children, frustrated in their desire to accomplish a lot because all they seem to do is meet the needs of little children all day. Remember, the frustration is a function of our expectations, and our expectations are a reflection of the social mirror rather than our own values and priorities.
Yeah. And to me, that as well points in this example, again, how I get the impression that Stephen Covey doesn't realize what he's saying when he says values, like, and how inside they really are, if not, they're beyond. And the very fact that he gives them the name values places them actually, I think, in our minds somewhere else. But that's what he's talking about, because I'm kind of thinking in this example particularly that most likely if you have children that you're running around after all day, it's because they are indeed the highest priority in the most natural biological sense of the word. Like they can't be anything else but because they are your children. And it would be so easy with the expectations like social mirror, social media, even, let's say, the women, let's say, the example, woman's got to go to work now and she's got to put her value out there just like the men and do all this stuff. And there may be a true economic need as well. But they become the expectations. So of course you're going to get back on the rumble strips. Oh my God, what am I doing? Poor kids, and I've got to go to work, and then you get really angry with the kids, and so it goes on.
So it goes,
yeah.
The typical parent losing control, getting angry. The kid doesn't have control.
Yeah. So clear.
There's a distinction he makes here about partway down on 191. You simply can't think efficiency with people. You think effectiveness with people and efficiency with things.
Yeah, I like that.
Because particularly when you're managing people or working with people, giving them time, like you can't. I remember when I left my company of 11 years, my first the second company I worked for, but the biggest part of my career early on. And I had an exit interview with this HR person who was brand new to the business. And so I go in, and I literally was in the middle of like a sentence, and she's like, "Oh, our time's up." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Yeah, I only had whatever 15 minutes for this meeting, and it's over. So thanks for your feedback." And I'm like, "Well, this is a great microcosm of why I'm leaving this company.
Oh, wow.
This is the way you're
Yeah.
going to treat people in their exit interview." Like,
Yeah.
it was the exact, like, the poster child example of treating a person with efficiency when you should have been treating them with effectiveness.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a very good distinction. I like that. And,
Yeah, and I have a similar example. I strangely answered a unknown number, which I usually don't do because it's usually somebody trying to sell something to me, and I usually just ignore it. For some reason I answered this one, and I have a subscription to a consumer friendly mag that sort of tells me data about prices and which is the best washing machine to buy. I can't remember what the equivalent is in the UK. There was something, I don't know, it was Which magazine or something
Which.
like that. Yeah, something like that equivalent. And she said, "Oh, did you know?" Because, okay, and to all of those who are listening, my economical situation this year is not so good. The state has set out for people on the lower income bracket, like little bonuses, or for your electricity and gas. Actually, for a lot of people, given the Russia-Ukraine situation, prices have gone up ridiculously. So there's some kind of state help for certain income brackets.
yeah, we have the same thing here.
Yeah. Okay. So I rang her. So, okay. And she said, "Okay, look, did you know this was?" And I said, "No, I didn't actually. Thank you very much for telling me. So what am I going to do now?" "Oh," she said, "are you a member of this magazine?" And I said, "Well, yes, actually I am." I think she was plugging the membership, but not cut her short because I already am a member. I already subscribe. And she said, "Okay, well, you can ring this number and they'll give you advice of how to do that." So I did that. So thank you very much. And sometimes there's some things I don't understand in the process, exactly what Italian bureaucracy is extraordinarily complicated sometimes. So I was trying to get very clear on it because this was like really useful to me. And Greg, the lady did the same thing. After 5 minutes, she said, "Oh, I've got to take the next call now." But I'm sort of, literally, I was halfway through the sentence and that was it. "Thank you very much. Good morning." I'm going, "What?" Oh, but what was the wonderful thing about it? So, right. Well, I'm in my power, to do anything with this. Ignore it, continue paying high electricity bills, go and find somebody else who can deal with it. Ring again. I'll probably speak to somebody else, but I'll already have a bit of information. So I'll get another bit of information.
Back in the queue for another 5 minutes.
Ringing them. Yeah. I actually realized that I had a whole series of options, knowing that I'm in my full power, honest to God, to do anything I want. And so again, and this is thanks to Stephen Covey, it's thanks to Jamie Smart that I'm now in a position to do that. It really is empowering.
Yeah.
And the habit 3 in some way speaks to that. Put first things. Okay, well, what is it that I end in mind? What's the first thing I need to do here?
Yeah.
And the first thing that I needed to do here was knowing that until I get this thing solved, it's going to be on my mind. So it becomes priority because I'm not going to be effectively able to carry out my other daily duties and things to do until this thing is solved. So I got back on the phone and carried until I got it sorted.
Nice.
So yeah. So lovely.
So the way you were just articulating that reminded me of Jamie's whole thing of, what is the either the first step or the next step you need to take.
Yeah.
And just worry about that next step.
Yeah. And it's sometimes got nothing to do with your final goal or outcome.
Yeah.
You know, it's like ringing up the electricity board, doing that. Let's do that first.
Yeah.
Yeah. And can you remember, Greg, as well, and I was with you on one of Jamie's, and we were, you know, what's the next step? And we got into little groups, Lynn, to talk about the next step. And I just said to Greg, I'm going to cancel everything for a week.
That's right.
What's my next step?
Yeah, there you go.
And then you had the most productive week ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember
Exactly. Yeah.
Wisdom in action.
Yes.
One of the, I know we're going to run out of time, I think. So the next thing I went to was on page 192 under advances of the fourth generation. Down towards the bottom of the second paragraph, he starts with, when a higher value conflicts with what you've planned, it empowers you to use yourself, just exactly to that, Elaine, actually. It empowers you to use your self-awareness and your conscience to maintain integrity. The principles and purpose you've determined are most important. Yeah. And then he says, instead of using a roadmap, you're using a compass. And to me, that just absolutely spoke to inner wisdom and, you know, listening to ourselves and everything that we know, and which is your reaction to that lady's call. Your reaction could have been anything. It could have been any amount of annoyance or whatever feelings, but you're totally
and I'll tell you what it would have been. It's like, oh, she just doesn't understand me, and I'd have gone back into, it's not fair. She maybe didn't pick up on my accent, and she should have known that sometimes these things are difficult for me. And then, like, she doesn't realize I'm getting on, you know, she needs to speak a bit. All this stuff would have come out, all of it. You know. And then I'd have done is shuffled off and, you know, gone into my own room kind of thing and felt miserable about it.
Incredible.
In the interest of time, shall we leave it there?
Yeah, I
think that was a great discussion. I loved that we were in a chapter that I thought might be difficult to connect back to clarity.
I did
back to
too.
the principles. I think we did a pretty damn good job.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.